We are busy with a lot of sports news today. Let's get up and go and tell you about all of it. It starts with South Korea's baseball league. They're targeting an early May start to their regular season. The KBO has been a test case for American sports leagues. They could begin playing exhibition games as early as April 21st. The league was originally scheduled to start their regular season on March 28th, so let's chalk that up as good news. Elsewhere, the Lakers plan to ask select members of their senior level personnel to voluntarily defer 20% of their salaries. The team hopes to avoid having lower income employees take a pay cut due to the coronavirus pandemic. Dayton star Obi Toppin was named the winner of the 2020 Wooden Award yesterday. He's a projected lottery pick. He also won both the Naismith and the Associated Press National Player of the Year awards last week. Hockey news. NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman said yesterday it might not be possible for the league to complete its regular season, though they are still looking into playing into late summer. Most teams have about 11 to 14, somewhere in that midst, regular season games left on their schedule. And the NFL confirmed earlier this week the 2020 draft will be entirely virtual, with all team personnel working from their homes. Yesterday, Adam Schefter here on Get Up explained how that might impact the way the teams do business during the draft.
Well, I think what it may impact, Rini, is the amount of trading you see, because if you're leaving the same amount of time on the clock, there is less time for teams to communicate with each other and turn in the picks. And therefore, you may see less trading than in other years. Usually we see teams jumping up and all around the draft board. And maybe we'll see it again. But I know there are people that are skeptical that that can happen under these circumstances because of the difficulties we're presented with here.
That was Schefter yesterday. This is Dan Graziano today. Dan, what are you hearing from teams regarding the challenges that they're anticipating conducting this draft this way?
Greeny, it's a lot of fear of the unknown. I mean, these are GMs and executives that are going to have to conduct the draft from their own homes and talk to their own people remotely, either on, Zoom or FaceTime or something like that. And they've never done it before like this. They have their brain trust all in the same room, and a trade call comes in and they can just look around the room and say, who likes this, who doesn't? You can read people's faces. So talking to executives, there's some concern about the ability to be nimble in that short window. And then one person said to me, would you want a franchise or life-altering decision to rest on the quality of your home internet connection? And I had to shake my head and say, no, I obviously would not, because those can be unreliable. My understanding is the league plans to do some pre-draft testing to have teams kind of get online and make sure things are working smoothly before the draft. But I don't think there's going to be any concession made if some weird technical glitch happens during the draft that messes somebody up. And I think there are some GMs and some executives that are concerned about that.
We're hearing about people making or throwing out ideas. Kevin Colbert suggested that every team should get 3 additional picks because they may be more likely to make mistakes under these circumstances. The possibility of maybe extending the window, giving teams more times between picks for some of the reasons that you're talking about. Any chance anything like that happens?
There has been some discussion in the early stages about lengthening the window in terms of the amount of time you have to make a pick. I don't know if they've settled one way or another on that. I don't think there's any consideration to giving extra picks. Colbert's idea is an interesting one, but I have not heard that under serious consideration. But early in the process, when they started talking about this, the possibility of extending the window of time you had to make a pick was raised, and I guess it's possible they could do that, although at this point they have not.
All right, so it's 2 weeks from tomorrow. We'll see all of that. Meanwhile, let's get to the actual meat and potatoes of this draft. The Cincinnati Bengals have been on the clock for a very long time now, and I continue to read stories and hear thoughts that the Dolphins have not given up on the notion of going all the way up to number 1 and trying to draft Joe Burrow. Once and for all, what are you hearing about that?
I am told that the Dolphins would like to go up and trade for that number 1 pick and take Joe Burrow, who they see as the number 1 quarterback in this draft. But I'm also told that at this point, the Bengals have given no indication that they're willing to move out of that pick, that they intend to sit there at number 1 and take Joe Burrow. I think you're going to continue to hear this over the next 15 days. It's entirely possible that the Dolphins continue to, improve an offer and get to the point where they entice the Bengals. But to this point, that that has not happened, and the Miami Dolphins are sitting there with 3 first-round picks, one of which is the number 5 overall pick, and they feel like if they sit at 5 or even if they trade up with the Lions to 3, they can get a quarterback that they like, but it doesn't look at this point as if they're going to be able to move all the way up to 1 and get Joe Burrow.
Right. There's a big difference between getting a quarterback that you like and getting the quarterback that you want. So for more on that, Dan, stay with me. Let me get Mel Kiper Jr. into the conversation. We are 2 weeks away from Christmas, and he's Santa Claus, if you know what I'm saying. So let me ask you the question this way, Mel, because over all of these decades, you have studied the value of these picks. You understand the way these charts work and everything else. If you're the decision maker in Cincinnati and the Dolphins call you and say, I have 3 picks in the first round this year, you can have them all, and I'll take Joe Burrow, do you do it?
Depends upon this, Greeny. If Joe Burrow is head and shoulders above any other quarterback, be it Tua, Justin Herbert, Jordan Love, because they're the guys who would be in play at 5 if you made that deal, then you take the quarterback that has that big gap, that he's your guy, he's your franchise guy in a division with Josh Allen at Buffalo, Sam Darnold with the Jets, and we'll see what New England does, obviously, moving forward after Brady's gone, and he's gone now to Tampa, so we'll see what happens with them. But if you're Cincinnati, you take Burrow. You don't even think about it. Because moving down and getting your picks, Grady, I went back to 1984. Boomer Esiason went in the second round to the Bengals. The Bengals had 3 first-round picks that year, none of which amounted to much. Ricky Hundley, linebacker, top 10 pick, disappointment. Pete Koch, defensive end, disappointment, and then Brian Blados, offensive tackle. So without Boomer Esiason in the second round, they don't get to a Super Bowl. And he did it without the benefit of those draft picks. So I think you look at draft picks mean nothing if you don't have that big-time quarterback. And if they think Burrow's the guy and there's a gap, you don't think of it. If it's close, then you would think about definitely moving down, and because knowing at 5 you get Tua or Herbert or Love, whoever you deem the second best quarterback.
All right, Mel, stay with me. I want to come back to you on this, but I've got a couple of other people with me I want to check in with here. Rex and Neek are with me so far this morning, and D Wood will be along as well. Rex Ryan, let me start with this. One of the things we think we like about Burrow is his readiness. He's ready to play immediately. But under these extraordinary circumstances where teams will have no offseason program to speak of, and it may be a truncated training camp by the time we get there, do you think it is realistic that even a quarterback as relatively experienced as Burrow is will be ready to start week 1?
Yeah, I think he will be. I mean, look, it's football. At the end of the day, and you're going to take this young man with the very first pick. So as a staff, you're going to do what he does best. You know, a lot of empty sets, all those type of things. That's why I think that this is a slam dunk, no-brainer. He comes in day 1, he's going to be the starter. And by the way, if they trade him, they're absolutely out of their mind. You know, they trade that pick.
I hear you on that completely. Again, as far as his being the starter, this plays into a lot of things, including the possibility, Dominique Foxworth, of the Bengals entertaining a trade of Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton is a guy that I'm sure a lot of teams around the league, i.e. maybe one in Foxborough, could be interested in if the Bengals were willing to trade him away. But how do you see that situation playing out with a truncated preseason for a rookie?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think it's going to be more challenging than Rex suggests. I think it's going to be tough for anybody, even guys who are not rookies, to not have that offseason. We're all kind of creatures of habit in football, and I understand they're going to go out there and play. They've been playing their whole lives, so they know how to play football. But it's going to be a little different for guys who are going from college. We all know how different the speed of the game is, and it's different from practice to the game. So if you don't even get a chance or get much of a chance to practice and do these offseason drills, learn the new terminology, learn the way the nonverbal communication that you need, particularly as a quarterback to receiver when you're on field making audibles and changing plays. Like, that's a lot of stuff to catch up on. So I'm not so sure. I think that a guy like Joe Burrow is talented enough, but there might be a little bit of a hiccup in him getting started, and having a guy like Andy Dalton there to maybe start the first couple weeks might be nice to give Joe Burrow some time to learn and grow.
Factor this in wherever you would like and however you would like. Joe Burrow is older than Kyler Murray, Daniel Jones, Sam Darnold, or Lamar Jackson. That is what it is. Obviously, he hasn't played in the NFL.
I'm older than them too, Greeny, but I can't play quarterback, so I'm not sure that the age matters that much.
All right, let's talk about some other quarterbacks in this draft. Let's live in a world, as we have this conversation, where Tua is a question mark. A year ago at this time, the Dolphins were talking about tanking for Tua. Now they are probably 2 weeks away from drafting him. But given his injury history and the inability to travel, his projection becomes a whole lot less certain. So, Dan Graziano, I come back to you, our insider. Tua, question marks. Justin Herbert feels like a lot more of a sure thing, but maybe some people are questioning how high his ceiling is. In your view, is it a slam dunk that if they're both sitting there at 5, Miami takes Tua and not Herbert?
No, Greeny, I don't think that's a slam dunk at all. I think it's entirely possible that in that situation, the Miami Dolphins would opt for Justin Herbert. And for the reasons that you indicate, Tua Tagovailoa is someone who comes in with health questions, and not about, will he be ready to start the season, but long-term durability. You heard Dolphins owner Stephen Ross even talk about this before the Combine, talking about he's a great player, but obviously there are health concerns. Miami's going to have to make sure those concerns are allayed to enough of an extent to that they believe it's worth risking the number 5 overall pick, or possibly multiple picks if they have to move up to get him, on a player who might not be consistently available for them down the road. Having 3 first-round picks gives them a little bit of a cushion in terms of using that asset, but I think it's entirely possible that given the choice, they would go with the healthier option in Justin Herbert, because a lot of these teams really like to avoid and minimize risk with those very, very high picks.
Boy, that would be fascinating. So, Dan, thank you. Let me get Mel back in here. Mel, over the many years I've been watching you on this draft, I've heard you be very critical of a lot of picks, frequently with my team, the New York Jets, over the course of time. If the Dolphins were to take Justin Herbert at 5 with Tua Tagovailoa still on the board, in your view, would that be an outlandish decision to make?
No, it's easy for me to sit here and say I have Burrow, then Tua, then Herbert and Love. I'm not making that pick for my organization with that injury. And that injury is critical in 2 ways. He's had the injuries. You don't know where he is with that. You think he's coming back and everything's encouraging? Great. But once he's in the league, is he going to be durable or is he going to be fragile? And that's the thing you don't know till he's in the league, taking hits from NFL players, not college players where he couldn't hold up. That's why this notion that Justin Herbert is no longer around or has never been around is ridiculous. Justin Herbert's always been around. He's gifted. This ceiling stuff is garbage. He's got the ceiling. What he has to do is, coming out of Oregon, adjust to the NFL. He still showed that